Part 1. The Warning. The crystalline chamber of Nexus Station floated in the darkness of space, orbiting a dead star that had cooled billions of years ago. Inside the massive structure, representatives from 47 different alien civilizations sat in their designated seats. The chamber was designed to accommodate every type of life form imaginable. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some needed extreme cold, others extreme heat. The technology that allowed them all to exist in the same space was beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of creating. Ambassador Velthar of the Kryn Empire stood at the central podium. His insectoid body towered over the platform, his forearms gesturing as he spoke through the translation device embedded in the chamber's systems. His mandibles clicked with what the translator interpreted as amusement. He was presenting the report on the newest species to be discovered in the outer regions of the galaxy. Humans. The holographic display showed Earth, a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. The data scrolled past quickly. Population 8 billion. Technology level, primitive. Space travel, barely capable of reaching their own moon. Military capability laughable by galactic standards. Nuclear weapons were their most powerful armament, and those were considered ancient. Technology by Council standards. Velthar continued his presentation, with barely concealed contempt. He explained that humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago, and even that was crude and inefficient. Their ships were slow, clumsy things that could barely cross a single sector without refueling. Their weapons were kinetic projectiles and simple lasers. They had no shields worth mentioning, no energy weapons, no quantum technology. The council members listened with mild interest. New species were discovered every few decades. Most were either absorbed into the council or left alone if they posed no threat. Humanity clearly fell into the latter category. They were too weak to matter, too primitive to be of concern. Several council members expressed opinions. The gaseous Veltorians, who existed as sentient clouds of particles, shimmered in colors that indicated boredom. The crystalline Torvath, whose bodies were made of living silicon, pulsed with slow light patterns that suggested complete disinterest. The mammalian Drelkoth, who looked vaguely like upright wolves, simply yawned. Then Velthar got to the interesting part. Humanity had requested observer status at the council. Not full membership, just the ability to send representatives to watch and learn. The request was unusual, but not unprecedented. Young species often wanted to observe before joining. The council voted quickly. Observer status was granted. It cost nothing and committed them to nothing. If humanity proved interesting, they could be elevated later. If not, they would fade into obscurity like so many other primitive species. That was when Hyunwoo entered the chamber. He was one of 3 humans granted permission to attend as observers. His uniform was simple compared to the elaborate garments and natural features of the other species present. He wore a plain black suit with a small badge indicating his status as Earth's diplomatic representative. Beside him walked Commander Dae-hyun, a military officer whose presence seemed redundant given humanity's weak military capabilities. Hyunwoo approached the podium reserved for observers. He was not supposed to speak during this session. Observer status meant exactly that, observe only. But he raised his hand requesting permission to address the council. Velthar's mandibles clicked with annoyance. The council speaker, a floating entity of pure energy called Luxara, considered the request. After a moment's pause, permission was granted. It would be amusing at least to hear what the primitive human had to say. Hyunwoo stepped forward. His movements were careful, measured. He looked around the chamber, making what humans called eye contact with as many representatives as possible. This was considered odd by many species, but it was a human gesture of respect and sincerity. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. "Thank you for allowing me to address this council. I will be brief. I come here not to request anything or to protest the decision you have made. I come here to deliver a warning." That got everyone's attention. Warnings from powerful species were common. Warnings from weak primitive species were not. Several council members shifted in their seats or their equivalent of seats. The Kryn ambassador's mandibles stopped clicking. Hyunwoo continued. "Humanity is grateful for the observer status you have granted us. We understand that we are new to this galactic community. We understand that our technology is primitive by your standards. We understand that we are weak compared to the civilizations represented here. He paused, letting those words settle. But I must warn you of something about my species. We have a trait that has defined us since we first evolved on Earth. We remember. We do not forgive easily. And most importantly, if you harm us, we will hunt you. Not for days, not for months, not for years. We will hunt you forever. We will cross the entire galaxy if necessary. We will follow you to the edges of existence. We will never stop, never give up, never forget. The chamber erupted in sounds that the translator struggled to interpret. Laughter, amusement, disbelief. The Kryn mandibles clicked rapidly, their species equivalent of laughing. The Veltorians shimmered in colors that indicated they found the statement hilarious. The Drelkoth howled with mirth. Velthar spoke again, his voice dripping with condescension that the translator captured perfectly. Ambassador Hyunwoo, we appreciate your warning. However, I think you misunderstand the situation. Your species is barely capable of traveling beyond your own star system. You have no military force that could threaten even the smallest member of this council. Your warning is noted, but I assure you, no one here has any intention of harming humanity. You are simply not important enough to be worth the effort. More laughter echoed through the chamber. Commander Dae-hyun stepped forward to stand beside Hyun-woo. He had not been given permission to speak, but no one stopped him. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were hard. We are not asking for mercy, Dae-hyun said quietly. We are offering you the chance to avoid what comes next if you make the mistake of harming us. We are not threatening you. We are warning you about our nature. The laughter continued. Some council members had already stopped paying attention, returning to their private communications or simply waiting for this amusing interruption to end. Hyun-woo looked around the chamber one last time. He saw the contempt, the amusement, the complete dismissal of his words. He had expected nothing less. But he had done what he came to do. He had delivered the warning. What happened next would not be on his conscience. Thank you for your time, Hyun-woo said simply. He bowed slightly, another human gesture, and returned to the observer section. The council moved on to other business. Trade disputes between the Torvath and the Veltorians, resource allocation in contested sectors, border agreements between neighboring civilizations, important matters that affected trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. No one gave humanity another thought. The session ended 3 hours later. As the various representatives departed through their specialized airlocks and transport tubes, Velthar of the Kryn Empire spoke with several other ambassadors. They joked about the human warning, about how amusing it was that such a weak species could be so arrogant. In the human observation room, Hyun-woo and Dae-hyun packed their belongings in silence. Another human, a young woman named Ji-won, who served as their technical advisor, asked quietly if they thought the warning would be heeded. Hyun-woo shook his head. No. They think we are weak. They think threats only matter if they come from the strong. They have never encountered a species like us before. What makes us different? Ji-won asked. Dae-hyun answered. Every species here became strong first, then spread to the stars. We did it backward. We went to space while we were still weak, still primitive. We did it through pure stubbornness. They can't understand that, because they have never needed to be stubborn. They have never needed to hunt something for days, for weeks, until it finally fell. They have always been the predators. And we were prey, Ji-won said softly. Prey that learned to hunt, Hyun-woo replied. Prey that turned the tables on every predator that ever threatened us on Earth. They will learn, eventually. But only if they make the mistake of harming us. The 3 humans left Nexus Station aboard their small, slow ship. The journey back to Earth would take 3 weeks. Behind them, the Galaxy Council continued its work, governing an empire of stars that had existed for millennia. None of them knew that in 3 months, everything would change. None of them knew that the Kryn Empire, so proud and so powerful, would make a decision that would haunt them for generations. None of them knew that humanity's warning would prove to be not a threat, but a simple statement of fact. The council had laughed. Soon, they would learn that some things are not jokes. Part 2. The incident. The planet was called New Haven by the humans who lived there. It orbited a stable yellow star in what the Galaxy Council designated as Sector 7, Region 12. The planet had breathable air, liquid water, and conditions that were almost identical to Earth. It was perfect for human colonization. The colony was small, Only 5,000 people had made the journey from Earth, traveling for almost 2 years in 3 colony ships. They had arrived 6 months ago and were still building their settlement. Prefabricated structures dotted the landscape near a wide river. Fields had been planted with crops from Earth. Children played in streets that were still being paved. The colonists knew they were breaking council rules. Technically, only full members of the Galaxy Council could establish colonies in claimed space. Observer species like humanity were supposed to ask permission first, but the process could take decades and Earth was running out of room. The decision had been made to establish the colony and ask forgiveness later. Minho and Ji-won had been among the first to volunteer. They were scientists, both of them, specializing in agricultural adaptation. Their job was to figure out how to make Earth crops grow in alien soil. They had 2 children, a daughter named Yoonji, who was 7 years old, and a son named Dong-hyun, who was 5. The family lived in a small house near the research center where Minho and Ji-won worked. Life on New Haven was hard but good. The work was constant, the challenges were many, but everyone felt like they were building something important. They were humanity's first real colony, the first step toward becoming a true spacefaring species. That was before the Kryn found them. Fleet Commander Zorvex was conducting a routine patrol of Kryn territory when his sensors detected the unauthorized settlement. His ship, a massive dreadnought called the Crushing Mandible, appeared in orbit above New Haven without warning. Zorvex reviewed the data. Human colony, unauthorized, approximately 5,000 individuals, no defensive capabilities, no military presence. The planet was in a sector that the Kryn Empire had claimed 300 years ago, though they had never bothered to develop it. The law was clear. Unauthorized settlements in claimed territory were to be removed. The Empire had done this dozens of times before with other species. The protocol was simple: bombardment from orbit, complete elimination of the settlement, then claim the resources. Quick, efficient, and it sent a message to other species who might think about ignoring council regulations. Zorvex never considered any other option. To him, this was just another duty, another task to complete before continuing his patrol. He gave the order. The attack came at dawn. Minho was making breakfast when the first plasma blast hit the northern section of the colony. The house shook violently. Yoonji screamed from her bedroom. Ji-won grabbed Dong-hyun and ran toward the door, shouting for Minho to get their daughter. The second blast hit closer. The entire row of houses next to theirs simply vanished in a flash of superheated plasma. The shockwave threw Minho against the wall. He struggled to his feet, ears ringing, and stumbled toward Yoonji's room. The ceiling was already on fire. Smoke filled the hallway. Outside, the colony was dying. Plasma fire rained from the sky like deadly rain. Buildings exploded. People ran through streets that were turning into rivers of molten glass. Some tried to reach the ships, thinking they could escape. The ships were destroyed in the first wave of attacks. The colony had one satellite, a small communications relay that broadcast back to Earth. The satellite's camera captured everything. The images would later be viewed by billions of humans, every frame burned into their collective memory. In those images, small figures could be seen running. Some fell and did not rise. Some tried to help others and died together. Some simply stood still, looking up at the sky, unable to process what was happening. Minho never reached Yoonji's room. The third blast hit his house directly. Ji-won, carrying Dong-hyun, made it outside before the plasma wave caught them. The last signal from her personal communicator was a scream that lasted less than a second. The bombardment lasted 3 hours. When it was over, New Haven was gone. The buildings were slag. The fields were ash. The river had boiled away. The 5,000 colonists were reduced to scattered atoms mixed with the dust of their dreams. Zorvex filed his report with Kryn Central Command. Unauthorized settlement removed from Sector 7, Region 12. No resistance encountered. Estimated hostile casualties 5,000. Kryn casualties 0. Planet cleared for resource extraction. Continuing patrol. The report was marked as routine and filed away. No one in the Kryn Empire gave it a second thought. It was just another settlement removal, barely worth mentioning. But the satellite survived. It was designed to be resilient, built to withstand the harsh conditions of space. The plasma bombardment had been directed at the planet's surface, not at orbital objects. The satellite continued recording for another hour after the attack ended, capturing images of the destruction. Then it compressed the data and sent it on the long journey back to Earth. The message took 2 weeks to arrive. It reached Earth's central communications hub on a Tuesday morning. The technician who received it thought it was routine data from the colony, maybe updates on crop yields or construction progress. She opened the file. The first image showed New Haven from orbit, beautiful, peaceful, with white clouds drifting over blue oceans. The second image showed the plasma fire beginning. The technician stopped breathing. She forwarded the file to her supervisor, who forwarded it to the department head, who forwarded it to Earth's government. Within 3 hours, every major leader on Earth had seen the footage. The debate lasted exactly 1 hour. Some argued for formal protests through council channels. Some argued for economic sanctions. Some argued for military response. But Earth's military leaders were honest. In a direct confrontation with the Kryn Empire, humanity would lose. The Kryn had warships that could destroy Earth's entire space fleet in hours. Then someone suggested releasing the footage to the public. The debate stopped. Everyone understood what that would mean. Once the public saw what happened, there would be no controlling the response. The government could make whatever formal statements it wanted, but the people would act on their own. The decision was made. At 6 p.m. Earth time, every news channel on the planet received the footage. No censorship, no warnings. The government simply released everything the satellite had captured and stepped back. For the first time in human history, every person on Earth watched the same thing at the same time. 8 billion people saw the plasma fire falling from the sky. They saw the buildings explode. They saw the tiny figures running, falling, dying. They saw 5,000 humans wiped out in 3 hours because they had built homes on an empty planet in space that some alien empire claimed to own but had never used. The reaction was not anger. Anger was too simple, too small for what humanity felt in that moment. It was something deeper, something that had been part of the species since before they had language. It was the feeling that ancestors had felt when predators threatened their children. It was the feeling that had driven humans to hunt mammoths across ice fields, to chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion, to never give up and never forget. In Seoul, a software engineer named Jinwoo watched the footage alone in his apartment. He had never been to New Haven. He had never met any of the colonists. But he saw Yoonji's face in the victim list that was released after the footage. 7 years old. He stared at her picture for a long time. In Tokyo, a cargo ship captain named Yuna saw the footage in a bar. She had flown supply runs to colony ships before. She knew people who had gone to New Haven. She walked out of the bar, went straight to her ship and started planning. In London, a retired military officer named Tai Yang saw the footage and made a phone call to his former students. They had been part of Earth's experimental Special Forces program, soldiers trained for asymmetric warfare. They met the next morning. Across Earth, millions of people had the same reaction. They did not wait for the government to act. They did not wait for formal declarations of war. They simply began preparing. The hunt had begun. In the Kryn Empire, Fleet Commander Zorvex continued his patrol route, unaware that he had just signed his death warrant. He would live for another 2 years before the humans found him. It would not be a peaceful death. Back on Earth, the government made its official statement. It condemned the attack. It demanded accountability. It filed formal protests with the Galaxy Council. Nobody cared about the official statement. What mattered was what the people were doing. In workshops and garages, people started modifying ships. In laboratories, engineers started designing new weapons. In training centers, volunteers started learning tactics. The government could not stop them and did not try. Ambassador Hyun-woo, who had delivered the warning to the Galaxy Council 3 months earlier, sat in his office and watched the news. He had hoped his warning would be enough. He had hoped no one would test humanity. He had been wrong. Commander Dae-hyun entered the office without knocking. His uniform was different now, darker with no official insignia. He carried a tablet displaying a list of names. Volunteers. Thousands of them already, with more joining every hour. "It has begun," Dae-hyun said quietly. Hyun-woo nodded. "Get them organized. Train them. Prepare them. But make sure." Part 3, The First Echoes. The Kryn mining station K447 was located in the asteroid belt of an uninhabited star system. The station processed rare minerals from the asteroids, sending shipments back to Kryn industrial worlds every 2 weeks. 73 Kryn workers operated the facility, living in cramped quarters and working long shifts in the harsh environment of space. One morning, the station simply stopped responding to communications. Kryn Central Command tried for 3 days to re-establish contact. Equipment failures happened occasionally, especially in remote mining operations. Still, procedure required investigation. A patrol ship was diverted to check on the station. Captain Vorthak of the patrol ship, Severing Blade, approached K447 with mild annoyance. These investigation runs were boring, usually ending with the discovery of a burned-out communications array or some other minor technical problem. He expected to spend an hour at the station, file a report, and continue his patrol. The station looked normal from the outside. All lights were on. The docking bay was properly pressurized. The ship docked without incident. The problem became apparent when the boarding team entered the station. It was empty, not abandoned, not damaged, simply empty. All equipment was running normally. Life support was functioning. Meals sat half-eaten in the cafeteria, still warm. Personal belongings remained in quarters, but every single Kryn was gone. The boarding team spread through the station, searching methodically. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no evidence of what had happened. It was as if 73 Kryn had simply vanished into empty space. Then they found the message. In the central control room, painted on the main view screen in what analysis would later confirm was Kryn blood, were 4 numbers, 4847. Captain Vorthak stared at the numbers for a long time. He did not understand their significance. He took images, collected samples, and filed an extremely detailed report with Central Command. The report was marked as anomalous and forwarded to Security Division. 1 week later, another mining station went silent. This one was K523, located 3 sectors away from K447. Same pattern. Station intact, equipment running, all Kryn gone. And in the control room, painted in blood, 4847. Now Central Command was concerned. 2 stations could not be a coincidence. An investigation team was assembled. They began reviewing security footage from both stations, trying to piece together what had happened. The footage from K447 showed nothing unusual until the final day. Then, at Aero 347 station time, the cameras in the docking bay recorded a small ship approaching. The ship was human design, though modified heavily. It docked smoothly, and 6 figures in spacesuits entered the station. The cameras tracked them as they moved through the station with obvious knowledge of the layout. They disabled no alarms because they triggered none. They moved like they belonged there. At several points, they even waved at cameras as if acknowledging that they were being watched. Over the next 4 hours, the Kryn workers were methodically gathered and moved to the ship. The footage showed no violence, no struggle. The Kryn appeared to be sedated or paralyzed somehow. When the ship departed, all 73 Kryn were aboard. The ship's final act was to transmit a brief message that was automatically translated by the station's systems. Justice comes slowly but certainly. The investigation team traced the ship's trajectory, but it disappeared into a heavily traveled trade route, impossible to follow. They began reviewing footage from K523 and found the same pattern. Different ship, different team, same message. The humans were hunting them. Back on Earth, Captain Jinwoo stood in a warehouse that had been converted into a planning center. Holographic displays showed the locations of Kryn stations, patrol routes, supply schedules. Information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain, but Earth's intelligence services had proven surprisingly capable. His team of 8 volunteers stood around him. They were not soldiers, not officially. Jinwoo himself had been a cargo pilot before New Haven. His team included a doctor, 2 engineers, a teacher, and 3 office workers. All had volunteered. All had trained for 6 months. All carried the name of one victim from New Haven. Jinwoo carried Yunji's name, written on a piece of paper he kept in his uniform pocket. "Next target," he said, pointing to a station on the map. "K698, 92 workers. We go in, we extract them, we leave the message. What are we doing with them?" asked Bowman, one of the engineers. Jinwoo had wondered the same thing. The first two station raids had been learning experiences. They had gathered the Kryn workers and taken them to an abandoned moon, left them with supplies and a working transmitter. Eventually they would be found by their own people, but that felt insufficient. We take them to council space, Jinwoo decided. Drop them at a neutral station with evidence of what the Kryn Empire did at New Haven. Let the council see that we are not killing civilians. We are making a point. Yuna, the former cargo captain who led another hunter team, had joined them via communication link. Her face appeared on one of the displays. Her team had successfully completed 3 station raids. The Kryn are starting to notice, she reported. Security has increased at some facilities. We need to adapt our tactics. Good, Jinwoo said. Let them be afraid. Fear is part of the message. The raids continued. Hunter teams operated independently across Kryn space. Each team had their own methods, their own targets, their own approach. But they all left the same message, 4847. The Kryn Central Command still did not understand the significance of the number. They increased security at mining stations. They added patrol ships to sensitive areas. They sent warnings to all Kryn facilities about potential human attacks, but they did not inform the Galaxy Council. To admit that primitive humans were successfully attacking Kryn facilities would mean losing face before the entire galaxy. The Kryn Empire had a reputation for strength and efficiency. They could not admit that they were being hunted by a species that barely had space travel, so they tried to handle it internally. That was a mistake. 6 months after New Haven, the attacks escalated. Hunter teams began targeting not just mining stations but supply convoys. Small Kryn cargo ships would be boarded, their crews extracted, their cargo left intact. The message was always the same: we are not thieves. We are hunters. Engineer Tai Yang had designed special tools for the hunter teams, devices that could hack Kryn security systems, disable their communications, bypass their locks. Earth's technology was primitive in many ways, but humans excelled at finding creative solutions to problems. What they lacked in advanced science, they made up for in clever engineering. One of Tai Yang's inventions was particularly effective. A small device that attached to Kryn computer systems and slowly, over weeks, gathered information. Patrol schedules, security codes, personnel rosters, everything the hunter teams needed to plan their raids. These devices were left on every Kryn facility that the humans could access. Sometimes teams would dock at Kryn stations openly, pretending to be traders or maintenance workers. The Kryn, so confident in their superiority, never suspected that the primitive humans were gathering intelligence right under their mandibles. The information network grew rapidly. Soon the hunter teams knew more about Kryn operations than some Kryn commanders did. In the city of Vextar on the Kryn homeworld, Security Chief Calmore reviewed reports with growing concern. 17 mining stations compromised, 9 supply convoys intercepted, over 600 Kryn workers kidnapped and later released at neutral locations. 0 casualties on either side. That last part troubled him most. The humans were being careful not to kill anyone. They were making a statement. This is not war. This is judgment. We could kill you, but we choose not to. Yet Calmore tried to get authorization to bring the matter to the Galaxy Council. His request was denied. The High Command insisted they could handle the situation without outside intervention. They increased military patrols. They hardened security protocols. They sent hunter teams of their own to track down the human ships. Nothing worked. The human ships were too small, too fast, too clever. They used trade routes to hide their movements. They modified their transponders to appear as different vessels. They never stayed in one location long enough to be cornered. And always, they left the number 4847. 1 year after New Haven, a Kryn patrol finally managed to intercept a human hunter ship. The Kryn captain, eager to prove himself, pursued the small vessel into an asteroid field. His ship was larger, faster, better armed. Victory seemed certain. The human ship led him deeper into the field, then suddenly reversed course and came about. Instead of running, it charged directly at the Kryn vessel. The Kryn captain, surprised by this suicidal tactic, held his fire for a moment, trying to understand what the humans were planning. That moment was enough. The human ship fired a single missile, a primitive explosive weapon that the Kryn shields should have easily stopped. But the missile did not hit the ship. It hit a large asteroid nearby, fracturing it into thousands of pieces. The debris cloud struck the Kryn ship like a shotgun blast. Shields were designed to stop energy weapons and solid projectiles, not thousands of small rocks moving at high velocity. The shields failed under the sustained impact. Armor was punctured. Systems were damaged. The ship was crippled, but not the human sea. Part 4. The Escalation. 2 years had passed since New Haven burned. The Kryn Empire was beginning to understand the true nature of their problem. What had started as minor incidents at remote mining stations had grown into something that threatened their entire economy. 70 stations now sat abandoned. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply empty. The Kryn had learned to recognize the pattern. When a station went dark, they no longer sent investigation teams. They knew what they would find: functioning equipment, no personnel, and the number 4047 written somewhere prominent. Trade routes through Kryn space were disrupted. Cargo ships refused certain routes. Insurance companies charged premium rates for vessels traveling through sectors where human hunter teams operated. The Kryn economy, which depended on steady resource extraction from their vast territory, began to strain under the pressure. Admiral Yuna had taken her operations to a new level. Her ship, the Silent Requiem, was now feared throughout Kryn space. She had discovered something that terrified the Kryn more than kidnappings or station raids. She had learned how to make them afraid of the dark. Her specialty was infiltration of Kryn military bases. Not the remote stations, but actual military installations with thousands of personnel and heavy security. It should have been impossible. The Kryn had the best security technology in the galaxy. Their bases were fortresses, but Yuna understood something the Kryn did not. Security systems were designed to stop external threats. They were not designed to stop threats that were already inside. Her team would spend months preparing for a single operation. They would study personnel rosters, learn individual habits, identify vulnerabilities. Then they would insert themselves into the base disguised as contractors, maintenance workers, or sometimes even as Kryn themselves using sophisticated holographic disguises. Once inside, they would not attack. They would haunt. At Military Base Core 7, Yuna's team conducted what became known as the Silent Month. Over 30 days, 17 Kryn officers disappeared from the base. Not kidnapped, not killed, simply gone. They would be in their quarters one moment, and the next moment they were not. Security footage showed nothing. Guards saw nothing. But every morning another officer would be missing. The base commander increased security. He put guards on every corridor. He implemented constant patrols. He had rooms searched hourly. It did not matter. The officers kept disappearing. And every time one vanished, a message would appear on the base's main computer system. Impossible to delete. 4147. The psychological impact was devastating. The remaining officers became paranoid. They refused to sleep alone. They demanded constant guards. Some requested transfers to other bases. Discipline began to break down as fear spread through the facility. On the 30th day, Yuna's team left the base the same way they had entered, by simply walking out through the main gate. They had never been caught. They had never been seen. They were ghosts. The 17 missing officers were later found alive on a neutral station, along with recorded confessions about their roles in various Kryn military operations. None had been at New Haven, but all had participated in similar settlement removal operations against other species. The message was clear. We know who you are. We know what you have done. Nowhere is safe. Engineer Taiyang had spent 2 years developing new tools for the hunter teams. His latest invention was perhaps his most important, a quantum tracking system that could follow Kryn vessels through faster-than-light jumps. Previously, when a Kryn ship jumped away, it was effectively lost. The hunter teams had to rely on predictable patrol routes and scheduled stops. But Taiyang's tracker changed everything. Now every Kryn ship that the humans tagged could be followed anywhere in the galaxy. The technology was based on principles that the Kryn themselves used, but Taiyang had modified it in ways that made it undetectable to Kryn sensors. Small devices, no larger than a coin, could be attached to a ship's hull. Once activated, the device created a quantum signature that the hunter teams could follow. Deployment was simple. The hunter teams had already been infiltrating Kryn facilities for 2 years. Adding tracking devices to ships was just another task. Within 6 months, over 200 Kryn vessels had been tagged without their knowledge. Now the hunters could track military ships back to their home bases. They could follow supply convoys to secret installations. They could map the entire Kryn military structure just by watching where the ships went. The information was shared among all hunter teams. The network of humans hunting across the galaxy was not coordinated by any central authority. Each team operated independently, but they all shared intelligence, helping each other become more effective. Captain Jinwoo used the tracking data to locate something he had been searching for since the beginning. Fleet Commander Zorvex, the one who had ordered the destruction of New Haven. The Kryn High Command had tried to hide him. After they realized that humans were hunting their people, they had transferred Zorvex to a secure facility and removed him from all official records. He was given a new identity and assigned to a classified research station that did not appear on any maps. But the tracking system found him anyway. A supply ship that visited his station was tagged. The next time it made a delivery, the hunter teams knew exactly where to look. Jinwoo spent 3 months planning the operation. This would not be a simple raid. The research station was heavily guarded, located deep in Kryn space far from any neutral territory. Getting in would be hard. Getting out with Zorvex would be harder. He assembled a team of 20 volunteers, the largest group he had ever worked with. They trained intensively, rehearsing every step of the operation. They modified their ship to carry more people and equipped it with experimental stealth technology that Taeyang had been developing. The operation took place on a night when the station's security was changing shifts. Jinwoo's team approached in a ship that was broadcasting Kryn identification codes stolen from a supply vessel. They docked without incident. The infiltration took 4 hours. The team moved through the station methodically, disabling security systems, sedating guards, and clearing a path to Zorvex's quarters. They encountered 53 Kryn personnel. All were subdued without casualties. Zorvex was asleep when they found him. He woke to find 6 humans in his room, all wearing helmets with cameras that were broadcasting everything back to Earth. Millions of humans watched live as Jinwoo identified himself and explained why they had come. You ordered the destruction of New Haven. You killed 4,147 humans. We are taking you to face justice. Zorvex tried to fight. He tried to call for help. He tried to escape. None of it worked. He was sedated and carried to the ship. The extraction was flawless. By the time the Kryn realized what had happened, Jinwoo's team was already 3 jumps away. But Jinwoo did not take Zorvex to a neutral station like the others. This was different. Zorvex had given the order. He was directly responsible. His fate would be different. The ship traveled to a location that the Kryn would never find, a small hidden base that the hunter teams had established in an uninhabited system. There a trial was held. Zorvex was given an attorney, a Kryn who had defected and was helping the humans understand Kryn law. Evidence was presented. Logs from his ship, records of his orders, testimony from Kryn who had served under him. The trial was recorded and broadcast to Earth. The verdict was unanimous, guilty. The sentence was delivered by a panel of humans who had all lost someone at New Haven. Zorvex would spend the rest of his life in confinement, forced to watch footage of New Haven burning. Every day, every hour, for the rest of his existence. Some argued it was cruel. Others said it was justice. But everyone agreed it was proportionate. News of Zorvex's capture spread quickly. The Kryn High Command finally understood that they could not protect anyone. The humans had resources, intelligence, and determination that exceeded anything they had imagined. More importantly, the humans had time. They were not looking for quick victories. They were looking for complete justice, and they would take as long as necessary to achieve it. The number of incidents doubled, then doubled again. Hunter teams that had been operating cautiously now became bold. They struck at targets that should have been impossible: command centers, military academies, even government buildings. At the Kryn Military Academy on their homeworld, a team led by a former teacher named Mion infiltrated during a graduation ceremony. They did not harm anyone. They simply stood up in the middle of the ceremony and displayed holographic images of New Haven burning. Every cadet saw the footage. Every instructor saw it. Every visiting dignitary saw it. Then Mion spoke in perfect Kryn language. This is what your empire does. This is what you are being trained to support. Remember 4047. Remember that justice is coming for all who participate in these atrocities. The team vanished before security could react. But the psychological damage was done. How many of those cadets would now question their orders? How many would refuse to participate in operations like New Haven? The Kryn High Command finally accepted that they had to inform the Galaxy Council. The situation was beyond their ability to contain. They needed help. But before they could formally request Council intervention, something happened that changed everything. A human hunter team, operating independently of all others, made a decision that would. Part 5. The Council reconvenes. The crystalline chamber of Nexus Station looked exactly as it had 2 years earlier, but the atmosphere was completely different. Where before there had been casual interest and boredom, now there was tension. Every representative present knew this was not a routine session. This was a crisis. Ambassador Velthar of the Kryn Empire stood at the central podium once more. But this time he was not clicking his mandibles in amusement. His body language, translated by the chamber's systems, indicated stress and anger. He had aged visibly, his exoskeleton showing signs of wear that suggested he had not been sleeping well. He presented his case methodically. Holographic displays showed Kryn stations that had been raided, ships that had been intercepted, personnel who had disappeared. The data was overwhelming. Over 200 separate incidents, thousands of Kryn affected. Economic losses in the trillions of credits. Then he showed footage of the incident that had brought the matter to the Council's attention. The passenger ship. The panicked civilians. The 12 dead Kryn, including 3 juveniles. This is terrorism, Velthar declared. The humans claim they are pursuing justice, but they are simply murderers. They attack civilian targets. They disrupt lawful commerce. They have turned Kryn space into a war zone. We demand that the Council authorize a punitive expedition to Earth to end this threat once and for all. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species supported the Kryn. The attacks on civilian targets were concerning. If humans could hunt the Kryn with impunity, what would stop them from attacking other species? Others were less sympathetic. Several council members noted that the Kryn had destroyed an entire human colony, without warning or trial. The Kryn action had killed nearly 5,000 civilians, including children. Was 12 deaths really equivalent? But the legal argument was clear. Humanity was not a full council member. The attacks were occurring in Kryn territory. The council had the authority to intervene if they chose. Ambassador Hyunwoo was called to respond. He walked to the observer's podium slowly, his steps measured. He looked older than his years, bearing the weight of 2 years of constant crisis management. He carried a single data tablet. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear, just as it had been 2 years ago when he delivered his warning. Thank you for allowing me to address this council again. I will begin by acknowledging the incident aboard the passenger ship. 12 Kryn civilians died. This was a tragedy. The humans responsible have been identified and are facing consequences according to Earth law. We do not condone the killing of civilians, and we have taken steps to ensure it does not happen again. He paused, letting that sink in. However, I must remind this council of how we arrived at this point. 2 years ago, Fleet Commander Zorvex of the Kryn Empire encountered a small, unauthorized human colony. Instead of contacting Earth, instead of filing a complaint with this council, instead of attempting any diplomatic resolution, he ordered the complete destruction of that colony from orbit. 4847 humans died in 3 hours. Not one was given a chance to surrender. Not one was offered trial. They were simply eliminated because the Kryn found them inconvenient. Hyunwoo activated his tablet, and the chamber's displays showed footage from New Haven. Many council members had seen it before, but it was always effective. The plasma fire, the running figures, the total destruction. The Kryn Empire filed a report calling this a minor territorial correction and thought no more about it. They did not inform this council. They did not apologize to Earth. They simply continued their operations as if nothing significant had occurred. Velthar tried to interrupt, but the council speaker, Luxara, silenced him. Hyunwoo had the floor. My government responded by attempting to file formal complaints through proper channels. We requested council mediation. We asked for justice through legal means. Do you know what happened? Nothing. Our complaints were filed away because we were not full council members. We had no standing to demand accountability. Hyunwoo's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. So our people took matters into their own hands. Not our government. Not our military. Our people. Citizens who volunteered to hunt those responsible for New Haven. And yes, they have been effective. More effective than anyone imagined. But let me be very clear about what they have been doing. New displays appeared. Records from every raid, every station infiltration, every ship interception. In 2 years, human hunter teams have conducted over 200 operations in Kryn space. Do you know how many Kryn have died in those operations? Before the passenger ship incident, the number was 0. Not 1. The hunter teams were careful to capture, not kill. They sedated personnel, extracted them, and released them at neutral locations with evidence of their crimes. This caused murmurs throughout the chamber. Several council members had not known this detail. The hunter teams were selective in their targets. They focused on military installations, mining operations, and individuals who had participated in operations similar to New Haven. They left civilian populations alone. They did not seek revenge. They sought justice. Hyunwoo looked directly at Velthar. The Kryn Empire knew this was happening for over a year before bringing it to the council's attention. Why? Because they were embarrassed. Because admitting that primitive humans were successfully hunting them throughout their own territory would damage their reputation. They chose pride over peace. Velthar's mandibles clicked rapidly, indicating extreme agitation, but he said nothing. Councillor Somin, the human legal representative who had joined the delegation after New Haven, stood to address the council. She was younger than Hyunwoo, with sharp eyes and a reputation for brilliant legal arguments. I wish to make the council aware of an important legal point, Somin said. Earth's government has not declared war on the Kryn Empire. We have not authorized military action. The hunter teams operate as private citizens pursuing justice through what they consider legitimate means. This caused confusion among some council members. How could private citizens conduct military-style operations without government authorization? Somin explained. Human law recognizes the right of citizens to pursue justice when official channels fail. It is an ancient principle in our legal system. The individuals conducting these operations are not soldiers. They are volunteers acting on their own authority. Earth's government cannot order them to stop, any more than we can order an individual citizen to stop pursuing any legal activity. Legal activity? Velthar sputtered. They are attacking military installations. In response to an unprovoked attack on a civilian colony, Somin replied calmly. Under human law, they are pursuing legitimate justice. Under council law, the situation is ambiguous. We are not full members, so council law does not fully apply to us. The Kryn attacked us in territory that was technically unregulated, so by what law should humans be bound? The council chamber erupted in debate. The legal implications were complex. Species had different laws, different concepts of justice. How could the council enforce rules on a species that was not fully subject to those rules? The debate continued for hours. Some argued that the council should declare humans a threat to galactic peace and authorize military action against Earth. Others argued that the Kryn had started the conflict and should bear responsibility. A third faction, led by the gaseous Veltorians who had laughed 2 years earlier, suggested a different approach, mandatory mediation. Force both sides to negotiate a settlement under council supervision. Finally, after 6 hours of debate, the council voted. The result was close, but mediation won. Both Earth and the Kryn Empire would be required to send representatives to peace negotiations. The negotiations would be held on Nexus Station under council supervision. Both sides would be expected to agree to terms that would end the conflict. Ambassador Hyunwoo agreed to Earth's participation immediately. Velthar, after consulting with his government, also agreed. The negotiations were scheduled to begin in 1 month. As the council session ended, Hyunwoo was approached by several other ambassadors privately. They wanted to know if Earth could actually control the hunter teams. Would the negotiations matter? Hyunwoo's answer was honest and troubling. I do not know. The hunter teams operate independently. Our government can make peace, but we cannot guarantee that individual citizens will honor that peace. We can only hope they will choose to respect an agreement. One ambassador asked the critical question, what if they do not? Hyunwoo met his gaze. Then the Kryn Empire and anyone else who harms humanity will learn exactly what it means when we say we will hunt you forever. Our warning 2 years ago was not a negotiating position. It was a statement of fact about human nature. News of the negotiations spread quickly. On Earth, the response was mixed. The government prepared its negotiating team, led by Ambassador Nari, a skilled diplomat with experience in complex international treaties. She was given clear instructions: get the best deal possible, but do not compromise on accountability for New Haven. The hunter teams received the news differently. Captain assembled his team to discuss their response. They had been hunting for 2 years. They had successfully captured dozens of targets. But the list was not complete. There were still Kryn officers involved in New Havdur. Part 6. The False Peace. The negotiating chamber on Nexus Station was designed to be neutral and calming. Soft lighting, comfortable seating adapted for various species, and displays that could present information in any format. Council mediators had prepared meticulously for these talks, knowing that failure could mean a conflict that might spread beyond just Earth and the Kryn Empire. Ambassador Nari led the human delegation. She was accompanied by Councillor Soman for legal matters and 3 military advisors who understood the tactical situation. The human team was small, disciplined, and focused. The Kryn delegation was larger, including Ambassador Velthar, several military commanders, and a team of legal experts. They wanted to project strength, but their body language suggested underlying anxiety. The council appointed 3 mediators from neutral species to guide the talks. The lead mediator was Ambassador Colvin of the Torvath, whose crystalline species was known for patience and fairness. The negotiations began formally, with both sides presenting their positions. The Kryn demanded that Earth cease all hostile operations, withdraw hunter teams from Kryn space, and pay reparations for damage to Kryn facilities and economic losses. Ambassador Nari listened quietly until they finished, then presented Earth's position. It was simple and direct: full accountability for New Haven. Every Kryn officer involved in the attack must be identified and face trial. Reparations must be paid to the families of the 4,147 victims. The Kryn Empire must issue a formal apology and implement policies to prevent similar incidents. The Kryn delegation rejected these terms immediately. They argued that New Haven was an unauthorized settlement in claimed territory, and their response was legitimate under council regulations. They were willing to pay modest compensation, but they would not put military officers on trial for following orders. The first day of negotiations ended with no progress. The second day began with the mediators trying to find common ground. They suggested compromise. The Kryn would pay significant reparations without admitting wrongdoing, and Earth would withdraw the hunter teams. Both sides would agree to formal diplomatic relations and establish protocols for future disputes. Nari considered this carefully. It was more than Earth had initially expected. The reparations would be substantial, enough to support the survivors and families of New Haven victims for generations. Diplomatic relations would give Earth a voice in council affairs, but it did not address accountability. No trials, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just money and a handshake. She requested a recess to consult with Earth's government. The mediators granted 24 hours. Nari sent an encrypted message to Earth outlining the proposed terms. The response came from Earth's Prime Minister within hours. The government was inclined to accept. The reparations were significant. The diplomatic recognition was valuable. And most importantly, continued conflict served no one's interests. But the Prime Minister included a caveat that Nari had expected. We can sign this agreement, but we cannot guarantee compliance from the hunter teams. They operate independently. We will make the deal and hope they honor it. Nari understood the implication. The government wanted peace, but it was leaving the door open for the hunters to continue if they chose. The negotiations resumed on the 3rd day. Nari indicated that Earth would accept the compromise with one addition: a truth and reconciliation process where Kryn officers could voluntarily testify about their actions without facing prosecution. This would create a historical record and provide some closure for victims' families. After consultation with their government, the Kryn agreed. It was face-saving for them because participation would be voluntary, and they assumed few, if any, officers would actually testify. The final agreement was drafted over the next 3 days. The terms were detailed: The Kryn Empire would pay reparations totaling 500 billion credits to Earth, distributed to victims' families, and to support future human colonies. The Kryn would establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth, including exchange of ambassadors. Both sides would agree to cease hostile operations immediately. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission would be established, with voluntary participation. Future disputes would be mediated through council channels, notable by its absence. No admission of wrongdoing, no trials, no individual accountability for those who had given orders at New Haven. On the 7th day of negotiations, both sides signed the agreement in a formal ceremony, attended by the full Galaxy Council. Ambassador Nari signed for Earth. Ambassador Velthor signed for the Kryn Empire. The mediators declared the crisis resolved. In her closing statement, Nari chose her words carefully. Earth's government accepts this agreement in good faith. We hope it marks the beginning of a better relationship with the Kryn Empire and the wider galactic community. However, I must be clear about something that my Kryn counterparts need to understand. My government can make peace, but we do not control every citizen's actions, she paused, letting the translation systems catch up. Many humans feel that this agreement does not provide sufficient justice for New Haven. Some may choose to pursue their own path. Earth's government cannot and will not order them to stop, just as we cannot order any citizen to abandon their pursuit of what they believe is right. We can only hope that the spirit of this agreement will convince them that peace is more valuable than continued conflict. The statement made several council members uncomfortable. It sounded like Nari was warning that the agreement might not actually end the attacks, but legally it was airtight. Earth's government was committing to peace while acknowledging that it could not control every individual. The Kryn delegation seemed satisfied. They believed Earth was posturing, maintaining face with their own people. Surely the human government had more control than they admitted. They were wrong. Captain Jinwoo received the news aboard the Persistent Shadow while conducting reconnaissance on a Kryn military supply depot. His team gathered to review the agreement's terms. They read through every clause, every provision, every carefully crafted sentence. When they finished, Jinwoo looked at his crew. They sold us out, Bowman shook his head. They did what they thought was best. The government wants peace. But look at what they actually committed to. The government will cease hostile operations. Government, not citizens. Not us. So we are on our own, said Hana, the team's pilot. We have always been on our own, Jinwoo replied. He pulled out the piece of paper with Yunji's name on it, now worn from 2 years of being carried in his pocket. The agreement says nothing about the 4,047 people who died. No trials, no justice. Just money and diplomatic recognition. He looked at his team. I will respect Earth's government. I will not start new operations or attack new targets. But I will finish what we started. There are still Kryn officers on our list who participated in New Haven. Officers who gave orders, fired weapons, filed reports. We will find them, and we will bring them to justice. His crew agreed unanimously. Similar discussions happened on hunter ships throughout the galaxy. Admiral Yuna, Engineer Taeyang, Captain Mion, and dozens of other team leaders all came to the same conclusion. The peace treaty was between governments, not between them and those responsible for New Haven. They would honor the spirit of the agreement by not starting new operations or attacking civilian targets. But they would complete their mission. 3 days after the treaty was signed, a Kryn colony in a remote sector received unexpected visitors. The colony was home to 3 million Kryn civilians, mostly families of workers in nearby industrial facilities. It was peaceful and unremarkable. The human ship that appeared in orbit made no hostile moves. It simply hailed the colony and requested permission to land. The colony administrator, confused but following proper protocol, granted permission. 6 humans in unmarked uniforms landed and went directly to a specific residential district. They approached a house, knocked politely, and waited. When the door opened, they asked for Fleet Commander Zorvex. The Kryn who answered was confused. There was no one by that name living there. Perhaps they had the wrong address? The humans thanked them and left. They searched the district methodically, showing holographic images of Zorvex to residents. No one recognized him. The humans searched for 3 hours before finally finding him. He was living under a different name, working as a civilian administrator. The Kryn Empire had tried to hide him by giving him a new identity and placing him in a random colony where no one would think to look. But the hunter teams had found him anyway. Jinwoo stood in front of Zorvix, now called Corvin, in his new life. The Kryn tried to deny his identity, but genetic testing proved who he was. "You ordered the destruction of New Haven," Jinwoo said. 4,847 humans died because of your decision. Your empire has made peace with our government, but you and I have unfinished business. Zorvix tried to run. He tried to call for help. But the humans had planned carefully. They subdued him, secured him, and carried him back to their ship. The entire operation took 20 minutes. Before they left, they broadcast a message to the colony and to any Kryn ships in the area. "This is Captain Jinwoo of Earth. We have captured Fleet Commander Zorvix. He is directly responsible for the massacre at New Haven. He will be brought to trial. This is not an act of war. This is justice." The ship departed before any response. See Part 7. The hunt becomes legend. 5 years had passed since New Haven burned. The galaxy had changed in ways no one had anticipated. The peace treaty between Earth and the Kryn Empire remained technically in effect. Both governments maintained diplomatic relations. Trade existed, though limited. But underneath the official peace, the hunt continued. The Kryn Empire was in chaos. Their military structure had been decimated not by warfare but by fear. Every officer who had participated in the New Haven attack had vanished. Some were found dead, executed according to human justice. Others simply disappeared, presumably captured by hunter teams and taken to unknown locations for trial. But the hunt had expanded beyond just those directly responsible for New Haven. Hunter teams now pursued anyone who had harmed humans, anywhere at any time. A Veltorian trade consortium that had enslaved human workers found their executives disappearing one by one. A pirate clan that had raided Earth supply convoys was systematically eliminated. A research facility that conducted unauthorized experiments on captured humans was infiltrated and destroyed. The pattern was always the same: careful intelligence gathering, precise execution, minimal collateral damage, and a message left behind. Sometimes the message was the number 4,147. Sometimes it was the name of a victim. Sometimes it was simply justice. Dr. Mion had become legendary among the hunter teams for her intelligence work. She led a specialized team that focused entirely on gathering information. They infiltrated corporate databases, hacked government networks, bribed informants, and built comprehensive files on every entity that had wronged humanity. Her network stretched across the galaxy. She had informants in dozens of species, some who helped for money, others for their own reasons. Many species had their own grievances against the Kryn and other aggressive empires. They were happy to help humans who were willing to do what they would not. The files Mion created were detailed and damning. She knew not just who had committed crimes against humanity, but where they were, what they were doing, and how to reach them. Her information was shared freely with all hunter teams, making their work increasingly efficient. Pilot Junho had developed tactics that became standard practice among the hunter teams. His specialty was hitting capital ships, the massive vessels that should have been impossible for small human craft to threaten. His signature move was elegant in its simplicity: disable weapons and engines with precisely targeted strikes, then broadcast footage of human victims to the crew before jumping away. He never destroyed the ships. He never killed the crews. He simply left them drifting in space, forced to look at the faces of people who had died because of actions their empire had taken. Rescue would come eventually, but the psychological impact lasted forever. Junho's tactics were copied by dozens of other teams. Soon, Kryn military vessels operated under constant stress, knowing that any patrol, any mission could end with their ship disabled and their crew forced to confront their empire's crimes. The psychological warfare was devastatingly effective. Kryn military morale collapsed. Officers requested transfers to garrison duty. Crews demanded extra pay for patrol assignments. Some simply deserted, unwilling to risk being the next target. The Galaxy Council called emergency sessions monthly. The situation had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Humanity, still not a full council member, had become the most discussed topic in galactic politics. Some species wanted humanity expelled from observer status and sanctioned. They argued that Earth's government should be forced to control their citizens or face collective punishment. Others quietly supported the humans. These were species that had suffered under Kryn aggression for centuries. Species that had been forced to accept humiliating treaties, pay excessive tributes, or watch their colonies destroyed. They saw humanity doing what they had been too afraid to do, fighting back. A third group, perhaps the most interesting, simply watched and learned. They saw that humanity was not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the most advanced, but humanity was proving that determination and patience could overcome technological superiority. It was a lesson that would reshape galactic politics for generations. Ambassador Hyun-woo, now retired from active diplomacy, gave one final speech to the Galaxy Council. He had been invited to address them on the 5-year anniversary of New Haven. His hair had gone completely white. His face showed the strain of 5 years spent trying to bridge the gap between Earth's government and the independent hunter teams. He stood at the podium and looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. 5 years ago, I stood here and warned you. I told you that if you harmed humanity, we would hunt you forever. You laughed. You thought we were weak because our technology was primitive. You forgot something important about predators. He paused, letting the translation systems catch up. Technology does not make a predator. Determination makes a predator. Patience makes a predator. Memory makes a predator. My species walked across continents for weeks to hunt mammoth. We sailed across oceans in wooden boats to find new lands. We went to our moon in vessels made of aluminum and prayer because we refused to accept that space was beyond our reach. Hyun-woo gestured to the displays that showed incidents of human hunter teams across the galaxy. You see this as terrorism, as lawlessness, as a threat to galactic order. But we see it as justice. For 5 years, individual humans have pursued those who wronged us, not because our government ordered it, not because we seek conquest, but because we are a species that does not forget. We do not forgive easily, and we do not stop. He looked directly at Velthar, who had aged as much as Hyun-woo had. The Kryn Empire thought New Haven was a minor territorial correction, a footnote in their history. They were wrong. It became the defining moment that taught the galaxy who humanity really is. We are not warriors. We are not conquerors, but we are the species that will cross the universe to hold you accountable if you harm us. Hyun-woo's voice softened slightly. Some of you support us. Some of you fear us. Some of you want us destroyed. I understand all these reactions, but I want you to understand something. This will not end until justice is complete. Not in 10 years. Not in 100 years. Human children are being raised on the story of New Haven. They are learning the names of the 4,847 who died. This has become part of our cultural memory, like the great injustices of our own history that we still remember thousands of years later. He prepared to leave the podium, then turned back for one final statement. We are not the strongest species in this galaxy, but we are the species that remembers, and that makes us the most dangerous species you will ever encounter. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. It was heard by trillions of beings on thousands of worlds. Reactions varied wildly, but no one could deny the impact. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, not with advanced technology or military might, but with an unshakable commitment to justice that transcended government control. The hunt continued and evolved. New generations of hunter teams were being trained. Young humans who had been children when New Haven burned were now old enough to volunteer. They joined the teams with the same determination as their predecessors, carrying the names of victims they had never met but would never forget. Captain Jinwoo was now in his 50s. He had been hunting for 5 years without pause. His hair was gray, his face lined with exhaustion, but his eyes remained sharp. He stood on the bridge of the persistent shadow and reviewed the latest intelligence from Mion's network. One name remained on his list. The last Kryn officer directly involved in firing weapons at New Haven. A gunnery commander named Tokvar who had been hidden by the Kryn Empire in a location that had taken 3 years to discover. We have him, Jinwoo said to his crew. After 5 years, we have the last one. The operation to capture Tokvar took 2 months to plan. He was hidden on a Kryn military research station deep in their territory, protected by multiple layers of security. Getting in would require perfect timing and flawless execution. Jinwoo assembled a team of 30 volunteers, pulling experienced members from multiple hunter groups. They trained together, rehearsing every step until it became automatic. The operation would be the most complex they had ever attempted. The raid happened on a night when the station's supply ship was docked. Jinwoo's team approached hidden in a cargo container that was loaded onto the supply ship. Once inside the station, they moved through maintenance tunnels that Mion's intelligence had mapped precisely. The extraction took 6 hours. The team encountered over 100 Kryn personnel. All were subdued without casualties on either side. When they finally reached Tokvar's quarters, they found him waiting, as if he had known this day would come. "I wondered when you would find me," Tokvar said in human language he had learned during his years in hiding. "I was at New Haven. I followed orders, but I pulled the trigger. I watched your colony burn. I have been waiting for 5 years for this moment." Jinwoo looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "Then you know why we are here." "I do. And I am ready to face whatever." They took him without struggle. On their way out, Jinwoo left a final message in the station's control room. Not in blood this time, but displayed. Part 8. The New Order. 20 years had passed since New Haven burned. The galaxy was fundamentally different now. The changes were not dramatic or sudden. They were slow, steady, and irreversible, like water wearing away stone. The Kryn Empire still existed, but barely. Most of their territory had been ceded to neighboring species through treaties that everyone understood were surrender disguised as diplomacy. Their military had been dissolved except for small defense forces. Their economy survived primarily on reparations they paid to human survivors and other victims of their past aggression. The once proud Kryn now served as galactic administrators and bureaucrats, their attention to detail and organizational skills valued in peaceful contexts. It was a humbling transformation, but it was survival. The alternative had been complete collapse. No species openly attacked human colonies anymore. The lesson had been learned and absorbed into galactic culture. There were new laws now, protocols that governed contact with developing species, regulations that protected even non-council members from casual violence. These laws existed because of New Haven and the 20-year hunt that followed. Captain Jinwoo was now an old man. His hair was completely white, his movements slower than they once were. He had spent 20 years hunting across the galaxy, living aboard the persistent shadow, pursuing justice for people he had never met. The piece of paper with Unji's name on it was still in his pocket, though now it was wrapped in protective plastic to preserve it. On a cold morning on a distant moon, Jinwoo crossed off the last name on his personal list. Not someone from New Haven, but a Kryn official who had authorized similar attacks on colonies of other species. The official had been found, tried, and sentenced. Justice had been served. Jinwoo stood looking at the list for a long time. 20 years of names, 20 years of hunts. 20 years of his life spent making sure that those who harmed the innocent faced consequences. He sent a message to his crew. "It is done. We are going home." The persistent shadow began the long journey back to Earth. Jinwoo had not seen his homeworld in 2 decades. He wondered if he would even recognize it. The reports said Earth had changed dramatically. Humanity was now a full member of the Galaxy Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. The journey took 3 weeks. Jinwoo spent the time organizing his files, preparing reports, and writing accounts of everything they had done. History needed to remember not just what happened, but why it happened and what it meant. When the persistent shadow finally entered Earth's orbit, Jinwoo was surprised by what he saw. Dozens of new orbital stations, massive shipyards building vessels that combined human ingenuity with galactic technology, defense platforms that could protect the planet from any threat. Earth had become a power in its own right. But Jinwoo was not returning to Earth itself. His destination was New Haven. The planet had been left untouched for 20 years, a memorial to those who died there. But recently, survivors and families of victims had decided it was time to rebuild, not to erase what happened, but to reclaim what had been taken from them. The new settlement was built near the ruins of the old one. Instead of hiding the damage, the builders had incorporated it into the design. Melted structures were preserved as monuments. The river that had boiled away had been restored, and in the center of the settlement stood a memorial wall. 847 names carved in stone, each one representing a life that had been cut short. Beside each name was a small holographic display that showed a picture and told their story. Visitors could spend days reading about the people who had died here, learning who they had been and what they had hoped to build. Jinwoo landed his ship near the memorial on a quiet afternoon. He walked slowly to the wall, his old legs protesting the effort. He found Yoonji's name easily. He had memorized its location years ago. Her picture showed a 7-year-old girl smiling at the camera, holding a plant she had grown herself. The description said she had wanted to be a botanist like her mother. She had loved drawing pictures of alien flowers she imagined might exist on other worlds. Jinwoo placed flowers at the base of her marker. Earth flowers brought all the way from his homeworld. He stood there for a long time, not speaking, just remembering. "I kept my promise," he said finally. "Every single one who was responsible faced justice. It took 20 years, but we did it. You can rest now." Behind him, a voice spoke softly. "Captain Jinwoo?" He turned to see a young woman, perhaps 25 years old. She looked familiar somehow, though he could not place her. "My name is Seoyun," she said. "My parents were colonists here. They survived because they were away on a supply run when the attack happened. I was born 2 years later. I have heard stories about you my whole life, about the man who carried my sister's name and hunted across the galaxy to avenge her." Jinwoo looked at Eunji's picture, then back at Seoyun. The resemblance was clear now. Same eyes, same smile. "Your sister was 7 years old," Jinwoo said quietly. "I never met her, but I carried her name for 20 years. I hope I honored her memory." Seoyun had tears in her eyes. "You did. You honored all of them. Everyone here knows what you did, what all the hunter teams did. You made sure the galaxy understood that human lives matter, that we are not expendable." They stood together in silence for a while, two people connected by tragedy and the long pursuit of justice. "What will you do now?" Seoyun asked eventually. Jinwoo considered the question. He was old, he was tired, but he was not ready to stop completely. "I will rest," he said, "but I will also teach. There are young people who want to know how we did what we did, how we hunted across the galaxy with primitive technology and pure determination. They need to learn, so if this ever happens again, they will know what to do." Admiral Yuna had already established a school for this purpose. The Hunter Academy, it was called informally, though the official name was the Institute for Asymmetric Justice Studies. It taught tactics, intelligence gathering, ethics, and history. Graduates went on to serve in various capacities, some with Earth's military, others as independent operators continuing the work the original hunter teams had started. Jinwoo agreed to teach there. He would share his experiences, his mistakes, his successes. He would make sure the next generation understood that hunting was not about revenge. It was about justice. It was about holding the powerful accountable when official systems failed. The hunter teams had largely disbanded over the 20 years. Most members had returned to normal lives, though they remained ready to mobilize if needed. Some continued operating, pursuing justice for others who had no one else to fight for them. They had become a permanent feature of galactic society, neither heroes nor villains, but necessary actors in a universe where official justice often failed. Ambassador Nari, now aged and serving as Earth's chief counselor to the Galaxy Council, received private messages from several council species in the months following Jinwoo's return. They all asked variations of the same question. Would Earth be willing to establish formal alliances? These were species that had seen what happened when humans were wronged. They had witnessed 20 years of relentless pursuit of justice. They preferred to be friends rather than enemies. More importantly, they valued humanity's proven ability to hold the powerful accountable. Earth accepted several alliance offers, carefully choosing partners who shared similar values. The alliances were not military in nature, at least not primarily. They were agreements to support each other's rights, to stand together when powerful species tried to bully weaker ones, and to ensure that what happened at New Haven never happened to anyone else. In the Galaxy Council chambers, a new plaque had been installed at humanity's seat. It had been suggested by Ambassador Hyunwoo before his death 2 years earlier, and the council had agreed to honor his memory by installing it. The plaque read, "We do not seek war. We do not desire conflict, but harm us and we will hunt you forever." Below that, in smaller text, "In memory of the 4847 souls of New Haven, whose deaths taught the galaxy the true meaning of human determination." No one laughed at the plaque. No one suggested it was arrogant or inappropriate. It was simply accepted as truth. a reminder of a lesson the galaxy had learned at great cost. The council sessions were different now. When disputes arose, mediators often asked, "What would humanity do?" It was not that humanity was perfect or always right, but they had proven that justice was possible even when it seemed impossible. That determination could overcome technological superiority, and that memory could be a weapon more powerful than any gun. 50 years after New Haven, a new species was discovered in Sector 12. They were aggressive, confident in their military superiority, and contemptuous of species they considered weak. Their first contact with the Galaxy Council was marked by threats and demands. An elderly ambassador from the Torvath, whose crystalline species had witnessed the entire human saga, took the new species representative aside privately. "Before you continue making threats, you should know about the humans," the ambassador said. The representative from the new species laughed. "We have reviewed their capabilities. Adequate technology, moderate military force. They are not a threat to us." The Torvath ambassador's light pattern shifted to colors that indicated sadness. Every species that has said those words is either gone or fundamentally changed. "Let